Good evening, everyone. It's that time of the week once again. I've just been, I'm up at Koi Wholesale today. And I was just nicking 5 minutes. The feeders go off at 6 o'clock. A few of them actually just drop a little bit before. So taking advantage of that moment. And fish are looking good. I was particularly admiring my very passionate project this year, the heel sawyers. My God, them things are flying like you just would not believe. It's going to be a scary result at the end of the year. And really looking forward to stitching all that video content together to making one long episode showing the journey of them from end to end. And a couple of other interesting ones upon the set out a while ago. We've got Yamabuki Ogans from NND. They're cracking ones they produce, really stunning yellow colour, but they've also got something a bit new and a bit different. Some of the Aragoke, the fully scaled, irregular patterned Deutz fish that I got from Okawa, which are absolutely flying. And as I sort of suspected, they didn't look very much when they were really small. But now they've hit about 20, 25 cm and they're starting to look the nuts. So I think you're going to be quite impressed with them. The shops that have had the small ones so far, for people who are also into angling, have gone down an absolute treat from what I can gather. And no doubt when people see these other ones, when they get bigger, that's going to carry on. But certainly through a pond window, they're an absolutely superb fish for it. So happy days. And good evening, everyone, as you're joining us. I'd appreciate, again, hit that like button, hit that share button. Try and get as many viewers in as we can for the live stream. But I think one of the nice things about these is obviously it's captured on YouTube, and the video does wind on after and get out to plenty of people to benefit from all that's shared. So I've got a guest this evening. Remember, guys, we've got questions to work through, but feel free to start firing them into the comments if there's anything you would like to know. And coming back to my guest, Martin from Clark's Koi has managed to make some time to come and join us this evening to help work through the questions and share his opinion. It's always nice to get everybody's view on it. So let's bring Martin in. Steve's back as well, by the way, folks. So we're looking a lot more organised and calmer this week. Let's bring Martin in. How you doing, Martin?
All right, buddy. You?
Yeah, good, thank you. How's things your end?
Very good. Apart from, as we've just been on about, the shop build, another couple of weeks would see it finished, but at the moment it's struggling with trades, but we'll get there. I've just given up now, a bit of a control freak, as you well know. So I've now just had to stand back and it will be done when it's done. It's as simple as that.
Patience, Martin, patience.
Well, Steve rung up and asked about a shop tour. And I went, no, not until the new bit's finished.
I had a feeling you'd say that, even though what's there already is superb. But yeah, we'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah,
so what's happening in the shop at the minute? Anything interesting sort of cropping up, coming up a lot?
Obviously, usual situation with, as you well know, we do a lot of pond visits, heck of a lot of pond visits, resolving pond problems, pond builds for this year. Christ, we shut the diary on that literally months ago. So many new pond builds, it's insane, which is great, absolutely fantastic. But pond visits, literally, I think we could take on probably another couple of people going around resolving issues with ponds and stuff like that, which is good. Don't get me wrong, it is good. And it's nice to see people, rather than just diving on the internet and trying to find something out themselves and deal with it, that are willing to ask. And don't get me wrong, you know, it's like being a detective. You've got to go through everything. I've just been through one that I came to you with. And it does frustrate me when I can't find an answer. It's not very often that happens, but you know, that's the bit that I enjoy, is getting down to the nitty gritty and finding out what's happening, what's caused it. And then you can resolve it properly.
Yeah, nice. Good. Right, I'm just having a look at some questions here to make a start.
I'm going to chuck some at you before you do.
Go on. You did
good bit of fun.
Time you come on.
Steve is not going to like me for this, but here we go. I was thinking that tonight we could do something a little bit different.
Go on.
In as much as we are going to offer at Clark's Koi a £200 voucher for koi, not on dry goods or anything like that, but for koi. You can come in the shop, you can put the £200 towards a more expensive koi, or you can split it up amongst different koi, whatever.
Yeah.
But it is only open to be answered over the next week. Answers are, I need people to put down what year was your first trip to Japan.
Fair play.
Okay. Now, answers, they need to answer, and it has to be Clark's Koi, Koi Talk, and then the year. So that's Clark's Koi, Koi Talk, and then the year. Okay.
Where are they sending these answers, Martin?
To poor old Steve.
Well, what we'll do is we'll work some towards the end. I'm doing a koi appreciation, but I'll let you drop off towards the end. And
but the other thing is they must also be a subscriber to Koi Talk magazine. If they're not a subscriber to Koi Talk magazine, then they can't enter.
Very generous. There we go, folks. It's worth it for £3.95. Like it. We'll fathom out the details at the end. Then I'll let you and Steve bosh it out, and we'll let everybody know what the crack is with that right at the end. But nice one. Thank you for that, Martin. I'm sure people will appreciate that.
Hope so.
Right there. Let me get on with. Going to go with this one first. I don't know if I've answered this already, but which Koi auto feeder would you recommend as best value for money? The one I would say for best value for money was the JBL one, which came out last year, I think. However, I'm not sure they're on the market at the moment because there was, as far as I'm aware, a problem with the mold. I fell victim to this problem. It was happening in the base of the feeders, unfortunately. But as of last year, I think they were on the market for about £350, something like that. And I was truly blown away with the functionality of them. My absolute choice of automatic feeder is the Japanese solar powered ones that get imported. They are super expensive. Well, super expensive in the UK after all shipping and taxes and things like that. But they're the ultimate. They sort of set the benchmark, and everything sort of that's come out since or sort of to emulate them at different price brackets up until JBL has sort of failed miserably. But JBL brought that out, and for me, I'm looking at the level of control I've got with the feed settings. That's the most important thing. I need to have enough feed settings and be able to have nice granular control over the feeding, which they're not perfect, but the one that is absolutely as close as it got has been that one. And for the price point, when I saw it, even I was thinking that's easy, £500 bit of kit, and to bring it in at the price they did was quite remarkable. But like I say, I'm not 100% sure that they are actually available at the moment.
As far as I'm aware, if anyone can correct me, fair enough. But as far as I'm aware, JBL now are saying that they will not be available until about June 2023.
There we go. That's unfortunate.
So, it's a sad statement, that, but
yeah. In that case, I mean, and obviously working at different budget levels as well, them sort of entry level one would be the Evolution Aqua feeder. They're handy. They're very, very portable. The battery lasts a long time. My only sort of problem with them is how far they flick the food, to be honest. Even on the lowest setting, they're very aggressive. And on the lowest, the sort of granular controls. If you're using a small pellet, it became problematic for me with that, because from 1 second to 2 seconds, for example, the jump was too big. Even just at the 1 second feed, when I'm starting a new batch of fish off, with a small pellet on 1 second feed, it was too much for most ponds and batches of fish. But with medium pellet, I found it to be absolutely fine, not a problem. And like I say, for the price that they are, they're a handy bit of kit. But yeah, the JBL, and then if you really want to go to town and get the ultimate bit of kit, the solar powered ones from Japan are the nuts. So yeah, they would be my three, depending on what price bracket you want to go for and what's available in the market. To be honest, that's That's what that boils down to, seemingly. Is it
If you
something
can
you get
manage
asked,
to
you
wait
get
till
asked a lot for, Martin, auto feeders?
it is one of the things. I mean, like you, that JBL feeder, without a doubt, for the price point that it's at, it's the best in the market, I think. Humble opinion, but there you go. And I have been saying to people that it is that good. I think if you can do without an auto feeder for this year, wait, save your money, wait till next year. That one probably will come in before June, but that's what we've been led to believe at the moment. And get one. Don't buy something that you're going to spend money on and then you're going to be disappointed with, because it's not going to do the job you want it to do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
There's certain things, you know, in our industry that there's only so low that you can drop in price for something before you end up buying something that either won't do what it says it's going to do, or you are going to be disappointed because it's not going to do what you particularly want to do for your circumstances.
Are people asking them now for a growth mechanism, though? Because when my experience of auto feeders, when I was all them years back working at my dad's shop, was that they were for going on holiday, which is actually the worst thing you can do with an auto feeder. You're better off not feeding them, because the horror stories I used to hear were just horrendous. But yeah, for me as a growth tool, they're absolutely essential.
Well, this is your fault. Literally, we get asked at least, I would think, half a dozen to a dozen times a week about auto feeders. And you could bet your bottom dollar when somebody starts asking you about auto feeders, the next thing that you will say to them is, "You've been on Koi Wholesale on YouTube then?" Yeah. I've seen what Ricky, and it's you. You are responsible for this.
Yeah, so, they are essential. You can't. Obviously, you need certain criteria and elements to go with it, and you got to know how to use one. But you can't get an established feeding pattern without one, unless you're so committed. You're going to sit by the pond for most of the hours every day, feeding bang on schedule. Yeah,
and again, it's sources for courses.
But no, essential bit of kit, and there's my advice on that one. And this next question sort of ties into this one. I sort of missed this last week. So, in his book, Yossarben talks about stopping feeding for, I'm presuming that was going to be 1.5 weeks or half weeks in the growing season. What are your thoughts, and are there any benefits? Right, so I'm going to start with, obviously, this whole game is built on opinions, and what works for one might not work for another, and that whole thing does go around, and it's very true. People find what works for them. Yoss is a great guy, very talented, so I'm not knocking anything that he's doing here, but it's not something I would choose to do. I'm not sure the reasoning behind it, but for me, I think I've mentioned this, it sort of ties in with the auto feeder. The mass growth, the successful growth, is all about incremental gains. Because this is at the same time as building the fish up, you're building your filter system up in sync with it to handle the feeding levels. So you cannot just start, even at day one. So I select a batch of fish, I put them in the pond. There's a period where I just sort of let rest, let the pond adapt to the stocking level, first of all, which won't take too long when it's warm. And then next phase is to start introducing some food. And even if I calculated, just an example, they needed to be on 20 seconds per feed to begin with, and I knew that was the case, I can't just give them that straight away, because that's just going to dump a shed load of food into the pond on a filter that's not adapted to that feeding level, and then the whole thing is going to spiral out of control. I'm going to have to spend probably a week, 2 weeks getting the water back on track before then starting to rebuild the feeding. Straight away there, you can lose 3 weeks, 4 weeks even of a growing season by getting that bit wrong. And if you're relying on this amazing British summer of ours to provide the heat, you can't afford to lose any time. Let's face it, Martin. We can't, can we? I'm sat outside looking out the window now. It's just so dreary and shitty. So,
just what you were just saying there about people often forget, and it's something that we need to keep banging on about, this ecosystem. Everything is interlinked. When you are feeding constantly at a certain level, then your biofilm within the filter actually matches what you're feeding. What you put in the fish comes out the fish, and that technically, it's a lot more complicated, but to keep it simple, basically, that's what your bacteria are feeding on. And if they've not got the food, then the biofilm decreases, and then as soon as you start trying to feed heavy again, there's no bio or not enough biofilm to cope with the amount once you increase the feed again.
Yeah, and then we have a problem. But so yeah, these incremental gains are super important. We literally and then we'll gradually build up to where I point. So I've talked about my feeding window. So if I've got a 5-minute target, I'll gradually build up to that over a period of probably 2 or 3 weeks to get them to the 5-minute point. And then allow, a period where just let that stabilize, see how the fish are doing, and then wait for the first drop off in feeding time, which whenever that is, depending on how they've grown, I monitor them feed. So we'll say they're taking 4 minutes, I give it a very slight increase per feed. But even bearing in mind, I think there's 8 or 9 feeds. So even just the 1 second increase is an 8 or 9 second increase to the whole pond for the day, which the filter's going to feel. That's quite a bit of food. And that's the last thing you want to do is overdo it and then having to spend time easing off the food completely in order to then get back to where you was and start incrementing from that. So, and this goes on absolutely consistently over and over the whole season. It's building up. That's why I've got to avoid stress events. I do not catch fish in them growing ponds. Very, very rare, unless I suspect there's a problem, will I put the net in. Even if Phil's cropped up, just to put in there, the koi appreciation I'm doing in a bit is actually a fish that Phil now owns, which I'm sure he'll love to see. But yeah, coming back to these incremental gains, just gradual all throughout the season. So even when the less netting events possible, because what happens, even if we've got a netting event coming up, that's 3 days of starving. First of all, then we've got the stress event. We've got to catch the fish up, go through it all. Then there's a period after where I've then obviously stopped feeding for 3 days, and it's enough for that filter to drop off a little bit. So I've then got to re-establish a feeding pattern and start building from there. So you can see why it's essential for me is to not be interrupting that, and then to stop feeding for a period there where it's a half a week, 1.5 weeks. I'm not sure. To me, I would be in a constant cycle there where I know the system's not going to perform to its maximum. Therefore, I'm probably not going to get feeding to its maximum either. So but if it works for Yoss, there might be people out there who do bits. It's like the whole debate over winter fasting. Do you feed? Don't you feed? What do you do? It really depends on the fish. It's quite simple. In that case, if you overfed in the summer and the fish need to lose a bit, not necessarily got to stop feeding, but got to massively reduce it, or even massively reduce it at a given temperature. You could do that in the autumn, because if you're burning at 18 degrees and you massively reduce the food, it's like a calorie deficit for us, for humans. Reduce the calories when the output's still high, and you're going to get a loss. You're going to get a loss in fat. And it's really case by case and just gauging it and monitoring it. It's like why it's important to visually see what's going on when you're growing, in case you need to step off the gas a little bit as well. I've only talked about increasing, but if you're overdoing it and the fish are looking too fat and too porky, even if it's they're within the 5-minute window and everything like that, got to step off the gas and let them have a bit of a rest. But that's not to say stop feeding; it's reduce feeding. That's all it is.
Well, we often get asked when people have watched like the Shinoda here at Surrey grow out, things like that, the amazing results that you get with such, and it's a thing that you bang on about all the while, and I absolutely totally agree. Keep it simple. When we try to explain to people what you've achieved, they can see that. But then when you tell them exactly what your filter system is, the pond that they're grown on in, how it all works and everything like that, well, why is it that I can't do that with my pond? And then you have to go through the whole mental process of explaining to them that at the end of the day, it's a whole different world, and you can push filters way more than what you actually ever think.
That's very good.
It can be very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing.
That's very well put, Martin. I think I think we've got this thing that people start feeding a bit more, get a 0.1 of nitrite, and then hit the brakes. That 0.1 of nitrite is not going to kill your fish anytime soon. If that's as far as you want to take it, great, but carry on. until the nitrite goes back to 0 and then go again. You've got to make them gains. You've got to go through that pain, that threshold a little bit in order to take things up to another level. But that is right. You know, I think it's better for people to play on the safe side than go ridiculous.
You'll know, obviously, Ben very, very well. Came over to see us, and a few months back he had a bit minor nitrite problem, and all it was filter. Yeah. Hey. Well, Ben had a minor nitrite problem. Nothing major. It was a case of biofilm not sufficient, decreased over winter. And I just said to him, look, keep your eye on it, keep it monitored. But realistically, for what it's actually at, I would just feed through it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did. Biofilm increased, down went the nitrite, job done, sorted, an increase, like I say, in the biofilm.
Yeah.
But sometimes people can get very scared of that and think, Christ, I need to stop feeding, I need to do water changes, and just slow down. Take a step back and watch what's happening.
That's what I've hoped in doing this, is just allow people to see sort of more where the boundaries actually are.
Yeah,
I can't do it any more than showing and obviously saying what's going off and take what you want away from it at that point. So it's very interesting. This is a fun question I've just seen in today's comments from Jeff. How you doing, Jeff? How many koi do you have in Japan as a aquarium, with which breeders? Do I get a pass? The answer is, Jeff, right now, off the top of my head, I've got absolutely no idea. There's a few of them, to say the least. A lot of them I would call private fish to some extent, because it's me just enjoying the kind of koi I enjoy, with no real pressure or thoughts on selling them. Obviously, I would if I felt the timing was right. There's quite a few project fish I've got at NND, which a few of them lumps are going to be hitting about 75 cm in autumn. And it's just been me. One of them being my dreamy Kindai shower I've got, which was a fish I've wanted that style of fish for years, and it cropped up and I pounced on it. So the answer.
And all I want is one bloody kawaku from you, and you won't let me have it.
You've got no hope. Well, in fact, you have got some hope. I've just told you how much you need to transfer, and then we can talk. Martin's talking about one of my Dainichi Kohaku from the batch we raised last year. It's an absolute animal of a fish, which I'm sure you'll all get to see at some point. But at the minute, it's busy being.
When it's swimming around in my pond at home.
No. Anyway, moving on. Breeders, Jeff. I mean, I've got fish NND, Taniguchi, Maraju, Omasako, Oishi. I just said Taniguchi. I don't know. Dainichi. I've got a few sat. Good question. I probably need my phone here, to be honest. But interesting.
Just remember the wife is watching.
It's all stock. The Goshki at Maraju, for example, I mean, I'll try and get some pictures together of that for next week. I mean, that was an absolute dream. It's been a project fish that I'm hoping challenges at the Old Japan next year. Fingers crossed. It's been a slow process with it. There's some fish at Okawa as well. I think they're all customers now, actually, but looking good. Yeah, might be about there on that one, but who knows? Truth be told. But it's just something I enjoy. You know, if I wanted to compete at shows, I've got no other choice but to do it in Japan as well. So some of these fish, like the Goshki I mentioned at Maraju, is a project fish that when I saw it, I thought, that could compete. But I knew it wasn't going to be till adulthood. Knowing the Maraju line, it takes time with them. It needed to get size. We did try and enter it after its first year in Japan, and it didn't perform. It wasn't ready. But having seen what it did then the following year, and then what I'm expecting to see this year, I think it'll hit its peak, be ready to go, and if it doesn't do it at that point, it'll be time to bring that one home for somebody else to enjoy. But it's a fun game. Risky one leaving them out there. It's not always my preferred choice, but like I say, at times it's deciding what's best to do them with the guys at NND. I know Jeff's very familiar with them guys. Their raising abilities, you know, Makoto's skills with the mud ponds is phenomenal. And I'm very, very, you know, at times I'm thinking right now, I've not got the best ponds for raising big fish. And yeah, you know, my space is given up to what's commercially doing a lot here as well. So yeah, that's why I chose to leave a lot of them there. And actually, the calendar behind you, the NND calendars, I think I've got a good chunk. Most pages I've got a fair few fish on them. So happy days. But yeah, as soon as I can get back out there, guys, to be honest, hopefully the autumn harvest, I'll be able to start sharing all of these in more depth with you, so you can see what there is and yeah, how they've got on. And on that note, just the last one here. I'm Crafty. How are you doing, buddy? Is there any news on your NND pond yet? We're organising it. We're putting it together and hoping to get that out to market this month. Which, for those who haven't seen that or not think, this is, I've got my own wood pond at NND that's got 40 pieces of really nice toe size sat in there that we're going to be releasing for sale for somebody to have their opportunity of having their fish in that pond for the summer. Then, you know, getting some nice footage of that being harvested and a couple more updates before that. So yeah, we're working on it, buddy.
Chance of a lifetime, really, for a lot of people. That a great experience.
It's the price point we've managed to working with them guys. Them guys are seriously into just creating amazing experiences for people, and they've worked with me to get Azikari fees that are just unrivaled, to bring the whole thing in at prices that's going to put it in reach for so many people, which is the exciting part about it. Because normally the growing fees alone typically would normally be as much or slightly less than what these are going to go for with the fish and fee included. So they've done me an absolute great there. That's going to be really nice for people.
I think you were probably going to end up seriously oversubscribed for that mud pond, mate.
We'll wait and see. Right, anyway, Terry, what kind of koi net would you recommend for catching koi for examination and overall ease of use? That's a good question. I always tend to go with the wooden handled ones because I just tend to find them easier. Obviously, the poles don't fill up with water. They're pretty sturdy as well. As ever, I mean, the Japanese nets are incredible. You don't really get them over here, and they cost a packet when they do. The hardwood handles are quite heavy on them. I'll never forget the first time on my first Japan trip when I picked one up, and I was very young at the time, and put that in the water. I was like, holy shit, it's just what I'm supposed to do with this. It took me back, and they last forever. And I think the most important bit in this, rather more the handle, is the actual pan on the net, because most manufacturers make the pan too shallow, and that really, there is an optimal perfect depth, because if you get the pan too deep, you create loads of opportunity for the koi as you're bringing it up to angle itself to make a nice jump, and that's the last thing that you want. And too shallow, as you're bringing the fish up, the likelihood is you're going to do scale or potential fin damage, and that drives me potty as well. And that's the thing the Jap guys got absolutely perfect with those nets, is the depth of the pan, absolutely superb, and the material that they use for the net as well, because that's one you've got to sort of balance in the water. If it's too fine, you're going to get too much drag, and you're going to be chasing your fish around all day long. And if it's too coarse, that tends to be nasty and can cause a bit of damage as well. But sorry, the ones, so to put it easy, the ones I use at the minute, because I accessibly are, is the Norfine hardwood handle ones. They're perfect for me. Work a treat. It gets a nice depth on the pan. They just tick all the boxes, really. So that is what I would recommend out there right now. And I use the round ones as well. I've got a few of the D nets that are more for when we've got the little fish, just getting a decent scoop of them up when they're in the corners. But yeah, the round ones be absolutely perfect. So yes, anything else you think we should cover there, Martin?
The thing I would say about nets, again, we said it earlier on, but nets, perfect example of don't buy cheap rubbish. It'll break on you. You will end up spending far more money over and over and over again buying cheap nets. Buy good quality ones when you start off. And that will last you sometimes 20, 30 years if you buy a good quality net.
Agreed.
You know, cheap stuff, it's never the answer. I know everyone's got a budget, but
thing, isn't it?
Yeah, if you can, everyone's got a budget, but get what you can. Buy the best that you can.
It's not always buying to price either, because I think in that case, I think a lot of the aluminium handled ones that are generally more expensive, I tend to find the least reliable, because the way they're connected, the amount that I'll just snap the pan nets off over the years, I just wouldn't waste the money on one, quite frankly. One more question before we dive into the appreciation stuff. So, Colin, I've changed over Saki Hikari growth, colour and balance. I bought some sinking. What are your thoughts on growth of the fish? Is sinking better or floating? I think I have covered this before, but we'll go for it again. I was talking to the sales rep at Hikari earlier, and he was talking about a pond where someone actually wasn't too happy with the staying out of the water was looking with sake, which surprised me. And as soon as he told me they was using sinking, I said, I bet bottom drain's full of it. Now, the thing with sinking food is that it can have some upsides and some benefits. Obviously, one thing you can do when you get them on sinking properly, you can stop the potential damage that comes from them feeding on the surface, which is something I've been victim of a lot this year. It is really, if you can avoid that, because I mean, losing one scale, can be 3 to 6 months of recovery. If it's a nice red scale, especially, sometimes, depending on the age of the fish, it can take even longer to come back, if ever it comes back properly. So you've got to be mindful of that one. Sometimes fish can be more comfortable feeding down there. It really depends on the pond setup. But the drawbacks, so a lot of professional breeders in Japan do use sinking food. But if we actually look at their pond setups, the ponds are really better designed for using sinking food than ours are. And the monitoring of the ponds is completely different over there. I mean, we're talking obviously ponds that are being observed consistently and constantly throughout the day, as opposed to looking at a hobbyist setup where you're at work most of the day and probably just back in the evening. So if you are, for example, using an auto feeder and you're firing sinking in, how the hell do you know if it's been eaten or not? And how do you not know it's just sat in the drain? Because these pellets are heavy. When it gets in the drain, it can take a long while to actually flush through and just sit there festering and polluting the water in the meantime. Momotaro use quite a lot of sinking food, but them guys literally build this design into the ponds where there's a feeding area. In the big indoor pond that they've got, there's a huge feeding platform, which not only, yes, it's shallower, which is a bit better, but they can literally see what's been consumed from the food fed. And even in some mud ponds that they've got, again, there's a feeding area where the feeder fires onto, where when the ponds are clear enough, they can actually see and monitor what's going off with the feeding. And that's a big difference compared to our setups where, let's say, the likelihood is most of it's going to get fired down the drain. There's ponds in Sakai, for example, use sinking food as well at times, but the ponds are so vast. The area where the feeder's going, the chance of it actually working towards one of the drains in that pond by the time a fish gets it is very, very slim. But like I say, these ponds are being monitored constantly throughout the day, and that's a big difference. So if you're using sinking, I believe the best way, if it's what you want to do, is to do it, but do it on a manual basis, or have it if you're confident you can isolate it within a pond and it's not going to work its way to the drain. But trust me, I've literally watched this when I was playing around with it last year. The 3.5K growing ponds I've got that are 20 foot long with a single drain, I had the feeder on its lowest setting, just dropping into one corner. And by the time the fish had cleared it up, or even sort of figured it out, this was the other interesting bit, the amount of time it took them to get used to taking sinking pellets. Everyone says, it's the way they feed naturally. Yes, carp do like to rummage in the bottom, but they were that used to being fed on floating. When I switched to sinking, I think it took about 2 weeks for them to really get their head around it. And then by the time that point, I sort of left it another couple of weeks. I'd had enough of it, come back to floating. And again, there was a transition period to get them used to that. But weirdly enough, it took less time to get them used to feeding on the surface than it did on the bottom. But going back to what I said, I literally watched the food within a 10-minute span, because the sort of circulation in the system move from the feeding area right towards the drain. And I was literally watching pellets over that time work them way to the drain before the fish had figured out and got to them. And these weren't excessive feeding levels. I had to dial it right back as well while they figured out what the hell was going off. And yeah, just my whole experience was I wasn't overall, and I got straight back to floating as soon as I could. Much easier to manage and control. And yeah, if you are, like I say, if you are choosing to use sinking, probably use it as a supplement, or just use it while you're manually doing it. So that's where I would go with that one. And all the best using the sake. I'm sure you will, as many people are, see the difference with that in absolutely no time.
Love the little piece that you did, by the way, the other day. I don't know whether everyone has seen it yet. Over at with the guys at Pond Planet, you did a little piece about comparisons. It staggers me that people still aren't getting that. You know, one of the things, I absolutely adore Ikari. It's just the best. There is nothing else that can touch it. And when you look at price, again, it is that thing whereby price point, I get you, but what you actually get out of that food for what you are paying for it, there's no comparison. And the way we sell it at the shop is, if somebody's never used it before, I say, take a bag, 2K bag, and if you can't see the difference in your koi within 2 weeks, which is bugger all, in 2 weeks, bring me the bag back with what's left in it, and I will give you your money back. As of yet, I've not had anybody bring me a bag back.
It's that locked on. And I think the reason I did that was because it works across, it doesn't matter, it's a fail-proof, foolproof test. No matter what size you're buying, because I did say, look at it on a similar sort of size bag. So, around if it's 2K, around 2K, 3K, whatever's closest. Likewise, when you move up, you get to the bigger bags. The percentage difference seems to be really, really similar. And it also points out, regardless of the food brand that you're using, it's a good way to look at it, because the price differences I saw in some brands or noted between like one of the small pots to the bigger pots price per kilo, you can see where if you can stretch to it, just buying them bigger jars is working out so much better in the long run. So it was a good all round test, which is why I wanted to do it, but also then point out, I think the issue is it's the initial cost of the bag with sake is a fair bit higher because the smallest is a 2 kilo. That's why I just wanted to point it out, because this is not me. I'm getting the results. I just want you guys. It's hard to know because there's so much information out there. Everyone's got their own different opinion on what food you should use and this. Sometimes it's because a retail outlet's getting incentives from different suppliers, or because of relationships they have with suppliers and stuff they want to push because of margin. I'm not interested in any of that. There's absolutely nothing. You'll notice on here I recommend very, very few things that I will even associate with, to be honest. It's something I've always been keen not to do. And yeah, with that stuff, and it's not just then looking at the price, it's the other stuff that we can't monitor as easily. And I promise I'm going to try and do some work on it next year, is then like your conversion ratios, because that would give you a true sort of cost per kilo there, cost per kilo of body weight gained, for example. And that, I believe, is where it would really expose nearly every other food on the market.
That's what I mean. Pound for pound, it is just, it's not just the weight thing. It is that thing of what you are getting for every pound you spend on, sake. What you get back out of it, or what your koi get back out of it, is just not comparable to any other food. It doesn't exist. No. And there are more expensive foods out there.
Yeah, or some of the other Japanese ones are hitting them marks that are quite difficult to get hold of. But I think the biggest thing here as well is that performance. And on one bit, waste levels has always been a tricky one, because fish are going to produce waste, and the way in which people gauge waste output from a food is probably different to what I would have done, and they've probably been a lot touchier. But in order to feed a lot of food, the waste has got to be efficient, because if it's not, you've seen the Hiyotsuri pond up here. You know, was it last week or week before he was here, Martin? I can't remember.
Not last week, week before, yeah.
Yeah, so it was at 1.8 kilos a day at that point, and still blowing my mind. You've seen it, how good the water was looking.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of filtration on that, but that level, you cannot understand. I've used, and when I say this, it doesn't come from me just using one food. Over 20 plus years of doing this now, I've used just about every food going. I've been given stuff to try. I've paid my own money out to try stuff. It's just gone round absolutely everything. So I know the limitations and I know the reasons I stopped using a lot of these foods. And that is a big one. I cannot think of another food where I could feed that quantity into that pond and not have serious pollution issues to deal with.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. Well, the best it is now, I need to measure it, but I'm guessing just from knowing the feeder settings, it's at about 2 kilo a day now. I made that adjustment a few days back, and it's still just looking mint. The whole pond, the fish, everything is just like, give me more. And every time I push that button and hit it up, I'm just like, when is this gonna swear at me?
You're holding on to your wallet then.
Yeah, I did at that point think actually it's just the equivalent of splitting one.
Well,
of
exactly what you've just been on about. We actually feed all the stock on sake. Now, we're not bothered about growing anything while it's in the shop. You know what I mean? We're not interested in it growing any bigger while we want technically to get it in, let people see the quality of what it is, and hopefully it sells the next week or the next day or whatever. Yeah. But the reason why we use it in the shop is, number one, it's better for the koi, but number two is the fact that you get less waste.
Yeah.
You know, and there's less muck actually going through the filters, etc.
Which that just tells us everything. Why is there less waste? Because they're consuming more of what's passing through them, you know, because there's not much to come out the other end. And
the ingredients are being used. It's not being bulked up with anything or anything added that the fish is not really using. It's using nearly all of whatever it's taking in that it's using. Yeah. It's just a brilliant food.
This is literally one of those guys, you know, I do keep banging on about it because I just want to get this message. This stuff is a game changer. It'll be a game changer for your pond, your fish performance, everything. If you look at it, food is so important. Cannot stress that enough. We see that across everything. Us as people, how differently, you know, I know when my diet's shit during times of high stress, it sort of all rolls into one, and you start feeling sluggish and shitty, and everything goes to pot compared to when you're sort of on that side of things, putting in your body what you know you should be, fueling up properly, and it all comes back together. And koi are absolutely no different. And it's just one area where if it meant you're buying one less fish a year or something like that, it's a change I would make.
Yeah. A great example that I can think of off the top of my head is your Dainichi pond. Yeah. That I don't want to know, it's none of my business, but there was hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of koi in that pond. Now, you know, if you take one individual fish like Sexy Lip that we know about, which is now been officially called, but that one fish, you know, if it loses its body shape, if it goes gutty, puts fat on in the wrong area or anything like that, can make a massive difference to the value of that koi. So again, why would you use poor quality foods? You yourself want to feed the best in those koi to optimize, obviously, at the end of the day, from a commercial point of view. It's better for the koi, which is always first priority, but from a commercial point of view, it is better for you because it works. It helps you keep the right shape of the koi, the fitness, the skin, everything.
Correct.
And you've got a lot of money invested in that one pond.
Yeah. Again, skin, that's another one. You know, you cannot skin quality, whether or not you can see it, that's what it comes down to. If you can see the difference, but believe me, I know that you will. But diet and nutrition, again, in humans, was one of the things that comes the most from poor diet. Bad skin, oily, greasy. Spots,
I'm just keeping my belly out of shot here when you talk about that.
But and fish are no different, you know. When you get all that stuff right on the inside, it comes out on the exterior. And yeah, enough about that. So you all know my feeling on it, and we'll probably find it keeps coming up as it comes up every week anyway. But yeah, I think it's about time then guys did actually start looking after me now. I do mention it every time I see them.
Hoping to get a few free sacks.
Yeah, right. Anyway, guys, some koi appreciation. Again, just as a quick reminder, if you're watching, please hit the like button, hit share. I'm sure you're going to love this bit. So last week, I think I ended on this fish, which Phil, if you're watching, you're going to love this. Yeah, this is a shower from last year, was one that was an absolute standout fish for me. And I said it was probably going to surprise a few people as to what was going on. The bit I mentioned in particular was around the head. So when I was speaking to Satch, and again, you guys watching, is your thoughts around what's going to happen with that head? Because a few people who saw this early on all said the same thing. That fish is going to be too dark, was the general consensus. And I can sort of see, you know, where people were going with that one, especially that the head was going to be too dark. Now, I want you to look as carefully as you can at that head right now, because this is going to put an interesting thing around skin thickness. So what I saw in that head was never that head was going to be too dark. What I saw there was that there's actually a lot of shiroji, white skin, sat on that head that you're not truly seeing at the moment because the skin is not thick enough. So there's areas under, beneath, you know, deeper in the head that aren't truly going to be there. And two things happen during the growing process. The skin thickens on the head and throughout the body. And sumi tightens and contracts a little bit. Certainly with this style of sumi, what I saw in this fish was incredibly stable. I knew the head pattern was going to change. I knew, and I was consistent that the head wouldn't stay that dark. It would change entirely. And the rest of the fish, super, super stable. Very little change in it. The biggest changes to come would be that you can see there's some sashi on the front edge of the sumi that would tighten and refine that a little bit, and the sumi would get thicker. But generally what would happen is the fish would grow well and everything would stretch out a fair bit. Other things I loved about this fish at the time, you can see Motogoro, as it is in this Tosai, that was going to also contract. This is a good indicator of what I'm talking about here. That Motogoro going right to the edge of the fin there, typically in young show is not going to stay that way, because good quality sumi, as it starts to grow, it's going to pull tighter, get glossier and thicker and pull tighter. So saw that happening. Pattern wise, just really loved the flow of this one. It's a prime example of the old teaching of Showa, that Showa should have a kohaku pattern to create the balance. That doesn't have a kohaku pattern at all if you actually strip the sumi away, but what it does have is balance. It's got balance to the eye. When you look at it, the whole thing, the combination of three colours, ebbs and flows really nicely over the whole fish. And that for me is where balance comes with Showa. It's how the three colours work together, not the kohaku pattern bit, because you see very few Showa that are winning top honours these days that actually have that kohaku pattern set up underneath. Most are very, very informal and rely on the sumi to add the balance to the overall pattern. So that worked a treat with this fish. Other little things that I like to see, the Benny qualities popping. Really, really good Benny, and it has such strong luster to it as well, which I absolutely loved. Pattern wise as well, the last step of the Benny pattern, you see the nice little bit of odame there, the white gap between the actual tail and the tail fin, which was prime. But the big one that got me with this all along, you probably know what I'm going to say, was the body. I was absolutely in awe of it from the moment I saw it. Bone structure wise, I just knew this was going to look super elegant. You can't see the height of the fish so well on this picture because there's a lot of sumi on the dorsal ridge as well. But the head setup, really love the head. Great mouth on it. Just the whole head proportions I knew was going to look really elegant as the fish got bigger. It guided well then into the dorsal. I'd say it was nice height on the body, like build a nice hump behind the head. And then the body line, as you can see, flows really, really well down to a nice thick tail. There's a nice little gradual taper there as well. Everything was just set for this to do exceptionally well. And if I can find it, after, what was it? So I think this picture here was taken in April, and yeah, that's where that fish ended up. Absolutely awesome. Not the best picture. Glad you're pleased with it, Phil, and I know it's going to do well in your pond, buddy. But yeah, look at that. Absolutely breathtaking. Yeah, wow. It did everything I anticipated it would, but just look at that head pattern. Look at the fins. Look what's happened to that Motagoro. It shrink back, and now it's like absolute ink. The messiness is all cleared up on the head. You can see, and if you actually look back, so we have done, Steve's done a cracking job of this. Get rid of me and Martin for a minute. You can see there, if you actually pay real close attention to the head pattern as Tosai, you can see where there was the darker area where the Sumi pattern actually was, and then them sort of musty grey areas that have formed now. The fish has got a bit of size and a bit of volume to it. You can also see what's happened with that Motagoro in the fins. It's completely shrunk back, and now it's got that super inky luster, as the rest of the Sumi. You know, that has really formed well. What could have been mentioned as Tosai in that one is that the Sumi didn't have much of a luster to it. It was a bit flat, and that's because it wasn't sat. You know, it was still sort of emerging, and it hadn't progressed enough. What I did use as a guide was that area on the top of the head, where it meets the body, where the Sumi was a bit more developed, to see the inky nature of it. And yeah, sure enough, I mean, it's just delivered on absolutely every note. I think it was about 52, 53 centimeters as well as Nisai, when it was about 25 at the time that picture was taken. So it's had a huge size jump. You can see what's happened with the body. Just absolutely cracking progress. But not a lot's changed. It's just filled out. You can see the structure, and that's an important thing. I always say bone structure never changes. It's fixed, but body changes, because body is it's flesh, it's fat, it's muscle, it's everything else, which can be changed, and that's all that's happened there. Just great progress from that fish, and yeah, I hope you can see it's just more than clear. You know, things that were possibly perceived as negatives in the Tosai were never negatives. It's just time was needed, and it's only been sort of 5 months from A to B there to get to where it has. And the Bene, again, just showing all them signs. Again, it thickened. You can see there it's substantially thicker. The hue is still there. It's still that intense red, but there's more thickness to it, which is normal because it takes time for that thickness to come and develop. The diet will have done that. You know, the colour food will have helped work it. But there was just great refinement to it. And what a fish.
And still more refinement to come on that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's just a mind-blowing fish, that.
Yeah. Still midnight at that point. But from the moment I laid eyes on that, it was, stunner. Real stunner. So, let's just see if we've got any comments on that one, just so I can help give any feedback. Oh no, that's not related to that one. Anyway, great fish. You can see there, guys, and no doubt if you're in the koi community, if you know Phil Walker, you follow him, he does put a nice update on, so you'll be able to no doubt see that fish feeding away and see how it gets on. But I'm expecting that to be a bit of a beast in a couple of years. Still plenty more to come from it. So that's that one, and I have prepared one more. This will be the last on the issue shows, and I'm going to get some more prepared. But just bear with me a moment. So I've got a lot of them all loaded. Probably missed it. How did you get on with your Oryxes, Martin? Did you keep any?
Kept a couple, but not many. Literally, I mean, I've got some more coming over from you anyway. You know what I'm like with this. I just, again, it's that thing whereby realistically, what you are getting is just such an amazing quality koi.
Yeah.
At the price that they're at, it's just.
So again, it's like with the food, it's the element of, you know, not really measuring the conversion, which is a big part of the value. It's with these, it's measuring what the lineage actually does and brings compared to just another shower, you know, when you see that size and growth and development that they get. But this one, I don't know if you can remember it, this was the minute I got that batch of fish, this was number one from the beginning and ended number one at the end. My God, it just ticked every box going. Start with the most obvious bit, which I think could possibly be seen as a drawback. Again, if you don't truly know what's happening here, this is the perfect example of bone structure versus body. So right now, that body on that fish was certainly not anything to sort of praise, because it's skinny. It's not got too much going on, but that's perfectly normal for a jumbo toe side. Interestingly, it's normal for a jumbo toe side that's probably going to grow really well. It's just throughout that skinniness, we need to ensure that the elements of the bone structure are correct in order to get that volume and that growth as the fish gets older. So you can possibly see here, very first thing that got me, the head on that fish is just insane. You know, sod everything else, I just couldn't get past that head. It's an absolute tank. And the minute I saw that and the size of the mouth on it, I thought, yeah, this is going to go. You can see, again, there's just that nice taper throughout the rest of the structure. The fin proportions are really nice on this one. They held them really well, had nice elegance. And yeah, you sort of scoop down that body. You look at the distance from the head to the front of the dorsal, absolutely huge. The spine was protruding well. And then, yeah, the length on the body, just insane. And this is another important point to notice, you know, that doesn't look like, I think if you compare that with the last fish we meant, the peduncle's not as thick on that fish, the tail stop area, but that didn't concern me because I just knew that body was going to pile it on. That's important to remember, that it's not all got to be super thick, because it can be too thick. If you get it too thick and not enough of a taper on the body when they're young, that's probably an indicator that that fish is going to struggle to grow. It'll end up becoming too stout. So this was really the perfect sort of body line that I would be looking for, in all honesty. Then you couple it with the other factors that it's got going on in the skin. I mean, you can see there just absolutely shining. Even there's areas of the sumi, again, it's not fully progressed, but you can see the thicker areas that got more of a shine to them, which is indicating what was coming. Benny quality, it's a bit softer in the hue of the benny if you compare it to that last fish. Thickness, not too much difference, but the hue is slightly different. So that's always going to be, you know, it's not going to be as intense as that previous fish, but still very good benny. It's the thickness which is most important. And as you move along, you can see the sashi was already quite well refined on the front edges, consistent across every step, which I look for, very important. And yeah, not too thick, so very quickly I know that's going to refine, become tightened, which is nice as a possible koi show candidate moving forwards, that you're going to get that refined, which is really important. And the kiwa, not perfect, it's sharp enough, but you can see like areas on the sort of second step of benny, it's a little bit, you know, it's not completely tight on the edge, but again, it's tosai, it's completely normal, it's sharp enough, and that's got time, and it will refine with size. And then, yeah, to top it all off, where the specialness really came into this fish is that pattern. Just absolutely wow. You talk about balance. Again, if you strip that back, this is a really balanced fish, but if you strip that back, it's a terrible koako underneath. Absolutely terrible. Not one that anybody would be wanting, but it works for showa with the whole balance and the flow of everything going on there. The memoir on the head, love to see that with showa. Looks absolutely superb. Then, yeah, just the rest of the flow. You've got the nice odame on the tail stop. The white bit there sits really well. Nice thickness. A bit of sumi moving it, and it just did everything for me. And the bit where I saw the most value in it was I knew this was a really safe and predictable fish as well. Because that style of sumi there is not going to change. It's not going to hold. All that's going to happen is it's just going to get thicker over time. The sumi pattern itself was never really going to change or have some crop up that I wasn't anticipating. So it was just a case of feed it, grow it and watch the magic happen, which is what I anticipated. So I think that was about 30 cm on that picture there at that point. And yeah, we get to autumn and that's what we have. And it just, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible fish. And you can see there, it's just done. It's not changed too much. It's got far, far thicker. You can really see the size of that head. I hope the wife's watching. Yeah, oh God, you've made me shit myself now, Mark, since she's been watching it. You've been talking about my Danichi pond, and Jeff's been asking me about fish in Japan. Yeah, yeah, brilliant.
I don't know what it is, you know, every time with Issa Shower, as soon as you changed and we went on to this picture, I can't help but smile. They're just such stunning.
Yeah. It's an incredible one, isn't it? So, yeah, you could just see it there. Everything started coming together. Size, I think this got up to about 58 cm as this size as well. So remarkable size. That was to be expected given that bone structure that it had. But you can see everything just started coming together with that. It gained the thickness. You can see the sumi starting to thicken. Benny's coming together, just more and more refinement, which every year now, if that's in the right conditions, it's just going to keep getting better and better and better, and getting the size with it, and eventually becoming a serious koi show contender, I think, with that fish, in all honesty. It's got the elements. It's got the pattern is where value really comes in. You know, if you've got the other elements, and so many koi from Japan have one and two, they have good body and good skin. That's really easy to achieve at a lot of price levels. It's pattern. When you chuck pattern into the mix and getting the real exceptional patterns is when value skyrockets. And yeah, that was just remarkable. That one fish alone would have made that whole batch of fish worth it for me to be able to find that, raise it up to that level and produce that Nisai from it. Just insane.
The other thing as well with pattern is, and you go on about this a hell of a lot, but when you go back to the first picture, yes, you can see the pattern, its original pattern, but then look how it changes to your eye when you're looking at it the minute the body starts to develop.
Yeah, I've not actually noticed that. I've not looked at these side by side, but there we go. Look, this is one thing, that the sheer movement in the body here. Look, if we look at the sumi patch as we're looking at these pictures, the sumi patch on the first one on the right, look at the amount of shiroji now between the Benny and the sumi. And I've seen this happen. And the NND line of Showa at the minute is doing this big time. And I will try and put some pictures together for this, because the Benny movement in them have been quite phenomenal. And you can even see, as we move to the left-hand side, the Benny area there where it sort of takes a dip in is becoming bigger and more prominent. These are all the little subtle things you can see even on the head. On the right-hand side, the areas of Shiroji have become a little bit more. And this is just because the canvas is getting bigger. Benny, it stretches with the fish, but at some point it contracts a little bit as well. And then there's just more canvas, more area for the fish to grow. But yeah, it's absolutely dreamy, that fish. And yeah, you can see there, that's, like I say, for me personally, being able to raise one fish like that, make the whole thing on a personal level completely worth it. And yeah, that has now ended up in a new home, very well known hobbyist pond, and yeah, it should do well. It should make it onto the show scene maybe next year. I did give him a very, it was one of the terms of me selling it. I said, if you show that this year, it'll never happen again. I did very explicitly told the dealer and him that message, and just to give it time to hit its peak before it gets into that show. But yeah, there it is once again, folks. Just
stunning, absolutely stunning. God, you've got to love it, sir.
Yes, yeah, you can't deny him, can you?
No, not when it comes to show. Just exceptional. Great koi, absolutely great.
The sumi on the nose seems to have fallen below the skin. How you expect it to be in development? Completely normal. That's, you've got two parts of the process there. Sometimes sumi can go into hiding when it starts growing, which is normal, but you've probably got the element there more so of the skin thickening and actually masking the sumi a little bit. which then that will come a point where that stops, and the sumi progressing from deeper in the skin will override that and come back up to the surface. And when it does that, it comes back, and that's when it starts forming that real inky black stuff that you cannot help but admire on that one. Let's just have a quick through, see if I've missed anything. Crafty again. How would I know that it would thicken and not stay thin? It's the bone structure. Just plain and simple, the bone structure of the fish and reading the body line. With that bone structure and that body line, I think I said previously, with the body line, I'm looking that as we move down the fish, I just want that nice taper in the sort of last third of the fish. Don't want any nasty nips or bulges, because that'll indicate that it's not going to go to plan with the body. And at that point, yeah, the bloodline's there, everything's there. So just fire that food at it, get it going, and watch the magic happen. That's all it is. When you get that part right, like I said, the real value in that fish came in just how predictable that fish was to my eyes when it arrived, when it was there. And yeah, sure enough, it delivered on it. So happy days. And I think last one to end on, Kev, in terms of show, how many is too many? There is absolutely no limit on how many shows you can have, Kev.
How many can you filter in your pond coat with? That's it. Simple as that.
That's the one. So right, have we found out what we're doing with this competition, Martin?
Yeah. So it's as simple as this. It's a £200 voucher at our shop on koi, not on dry goods. And the way it works is you've got to slap a comment up on this. You've got a week to do it in.
Actually, Steve said is to email the answers into contact@koitalk.com.
There you go. And your answer must be Clark's Koi, Koi Talk, and then the year that Ricky took his first trip out to Japan. Okay,
Perfect.
Steve will let us know who the winner is, and then there'll be a £200 voucher going off to you. So you must, absolutely must, be a subscriber to Koi Talk magazine.
Love it,
if you're not a subscriber to the magazine, you can't win the voucher.
Fantastic. And I'll announce the winner next week then.
Yeah, absolutely.
On Q&A. But thank you very much for that. I'm sure everyone will appreciate it. And
dead quick before you go, me and you had a conversation over crap in water. Just want to tell you that we're going to be having a really good conversation on that very shortly, because I think I might have said university that might want to get involved in other things that are lurking in our water.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Source water. We have been talking about. So that'll all be good. It's all, I'm sure at some point there's going to be a lot of information come to light on this one.
Since you started me on the trail, I'll tell you what, we don't want to frighten anyone about what's in drinking water, and you are safe to drink it. But the amount of stuff that's in there that none of us know about is just...
Yeah, correct.
It's crazy. PFBs, PFAs, PFAOs, Gen X chemicals. And half of this stuff is used to waterproof jackets or... You know,
we shouldn't even be drinking it. That is for
Teflon coating pans and stuff like that, and it's in the water. It's frightening. But anyway, that's another one.
Brilliant. So thank you very much, Martin. And
thank you very much, mate. A pleasure as always.
Sometime soon. Perfect. Right, folks. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you've enjoyed that again and the appreciation section. I am going to make a very concerted effort to include at least one of those in at the end of every episode of this. Like I say, work on pulling some pictures together, even if it's the same variety, because my God, I've got a lot of shower stuff, but even amongst shower, you've got so many variations depending on the breeder and bloodline that it's come from as well. So any little quirks I can pull together that I think will add value, I'll try and pull it together for you and try and get a range of varieties in as well to discuss. So yeah, as ever, thank you very much, guys, and I will be back next week.